I built Ea-Nasir's neighborhood in Songs of Syx. After watching someone else make Ea-Nasir's house in Minecraft, I thought to myself, why not recreate our copper salesman's environment in Songs of Syx, with actual working buildings and functional logistics. I was prepared to embark on a mission to create an immersive Bronze Age environment with people going about their day-to-day activities. But before I could even play the game, I first needed to do some research on the ancient city of Ur, and figure out our strategy to recreate it tile by tile. If I could even do that. Unfortunately, only a fraction of Ur had been excavated, so it'd be impossible to recreate the whole city building by building, street by street, into the game. As we can see on Google Earth, the city of Ur was located near the coast on an island on a river delta. Only a small patch of excavated streets and buildings are available, with the main ziggurat being located on the northwest side of the city. The mouth of the Euphrates River would have also been nearby, as the location of Ur is currently in the middle of the desert, as sediment created land over time, gradually causing the Euphrates to shift position as well. There are no mods to overlay maps of the city into the game that I'm aware of, but luckily another English geezer already mapped out some portions of the city with a scale bar to help me, meaning my role would be to measure out all of the roads, assuming all tiles were 1 by 1 meters in size. Of course, the city is not exactly orthogonal, so I had to make a plan to adjust some rooms so that they would roughly fit on a grid. Another issue is room size, some rooms only being 1 tile wide, so I had to adjust some room layouts in the game. And with a sound plan to go forward with, I loaded up the game and traced out the road layout with the measurements I had taken. I chose my starting race as humans, chose the world map as the Gulf of Iran, chose a location near the mouth of the Euphrates River with a small river to be used as a moat, and got settled in. On the southeast part of the island where Ea-Nasir actually lived in Ur, I marked out an 85 by 120 tile area, the rough size of the excavation site, with Ea-Nasir's house being outlined in red. The next step was the streets, and where do I even start here? After thinking about it for a while, I placed down the first street, which was 40 tiles in length. Then after that was done, I immediately marked out alleyways, as back in the Bronze Age, buildings were several meters deep, so properties located deep within these buildings needed narrow alleyways for public access. Historians would most likely say that the city didn't have much of a master plan, so over time properties kept on being clustered to existing buildings till there was no land left. I then marked out the diagonal roads and built other streets that lead somewhere. To me, there's something fascinating about trying to recreate these kinds of environments with their own ambience, so to speak. And finally, the road network was finished. Time to build Ea-Nasir's actual house, which was connected by 2 alleyways. Due to the buildings being so wide, most buildings in this area had to use their own open courtyards for daylight, shade, evaporative cooling, socialization, and security. So I'm starting off with Ea-Nasir's courtyard. Since I had a starting population of 10, I had to cram some essential services into the courtyard. Next, all cities needed janitors, so I decided to make this the entrance to Ea-Nasir's house. Next, I decided to make 2 rooms for the storage of food, copper ore, and of course clay tablets to be used for the collective good of the settlement. In Songs of Syx, you play as a communist feudalist overlord, so I needed storage areas to store everything for the greater good of the colony. In reality, there would have been the city treasury, with most storage areas being private property. Next, I placed the first residential room to house my population. I didn't know if Ea-Nasir actually slept here, but this'll do for now. Next is a long room. Well, for this, I actually had to place 2 houses, as I didn't know what this room would be. Next, I built the neighbor's house with residential rooms facing a courtyard. Then another neighboring complex, as we needed to house more immigrants. Next, to keep my population surviving and thriving, I added a chicken pasture, and yes, I am using a mod which I'll make a video on later, as it's really expansive and I want to cover it, of course. After completing the building so far on developer mode, I then got rid of the template, built the walls that surrounded the city of Ur, built a small shrine to the south of Ea-Nasir's house in this courtyard, with a smaller courtyard dwelling in between, and then hit fast forward. In Ur, every property pretty much had their own side hustle, so across the street, I used the carpenter as an entry point, not caring about noise pollution. I then built a second carpenter, as this building is just so deep. Shortly after, I got to work on the public square, which I used for trading with other city-states such as Uruk or Eridu. Here, we would export everything any property was making a lot of. As a communist monarchist, all trade is done through the state, so no individualized trade here for anyone. All the money goes to me, basically. Sooner or later, things were looking more Sumerian, and I had unlocked labs. On the map of Ea-Nasir's neighborhood, there were some very small properties mixed with larger ones, so I placed 2 food and storage related buildings to the side of this street. Vendors would have traditionally sold their produce out onto the streets. I had no alleyways wide enough for this, so this courtyard will do for now for a food stall. You can also see I had made some entrances as public toilets. How lovely! I forgot one road, so I just eyeballed it down to where there was clay and ore deposits, as we needed that clay for the tablets and labs. Then this property stretched from street to street, so I decided to make half of it a weaver. Our population needed grain for bread and a mass grave, so I placed them outside of Ur's walls. Eventually more residential and storage units were added as my population was booming. I also expanded onto the other side of the street too, as I needed a barracks in this weird shaped room which actually exists on plan. I was beginning to fill in the gaps even more, and I was forced to merge some rooms together like this lab. Same goes for the library. I connected to what might not actually be a courtyard in real life. The neighborhood was taking shape, and I was actually enjoying the process a lot. Over here, the archaeological survey ends, so I had somewhat freedom over what I wanted to do in these unknown areas. There was probably a road connecting these 2 other roads. Time for another grand courtyard with a library as an entrance. I was almost approaching full coverage of the dig site. I didn't want the square to feel open, so I had to guess what was actually outside of the excavation area here. Next, I built another made-up property with a hospital as an entrance. I wanted this street to feel crowded and immersive too, even if it wasn't excavated. Next, I copied a few rooms over to a physician deep inside the plan instead of facing the streets. I basically didn't need to build any more houses at this point, but needed the physician, so this'll have to do. Next, I converted one of the streets into a market and lined the edges with vendors like in real life. And finally, the last actual mapped out building was built. I then changed all the walls to white, and it looked like white stucco, which is very similar to what the Sumerians used. I also built a warehouse with a copper deposit to create a more immersive environment. As this was the Bronze Age, everyone needed copper for tools, everyone was buying and selling copper at inflated prices. Copper was everything back then. To end everything off, I finished with the ziggurat of Ur. So this is the city of Ur. Initially, we found the dimensions of all of the streets thanks to a nice scale bar that helped us out. We first built all of the roads and then filled in all of the different buildings as best we could. Obviously, there are a network of rooms, so I had to build corridors like this with actual industries inside. And you know, we've got people living here, they have access to no daylight. And this was just the reality of living in Mesopotamia at the time. Now we go to Ea-Nasir's house. You have the central courtyard over here, a gathering spot, you've got a speaker, and most importantly, we have this warehouse. We have a lot of copper ore. Ea-Nasir was a copper salesman. Over here we've got slaves. Slavery was a thing in Mesopotamia. As we hover over this room over here, we've got Ea-Nasir, the man himself. I couldn't actually get a proper bearded man to move in here. This is where Ea-Nasir lives. He's got this whole area for the storage of clay tablets, which if we go to our labs here, some of them actually use clay tablets. So that's realistic. And if we go to the side of this little river over here, we've got the slaves that are digging up the clay to be made into tablets. And all of Ea-Nasir's complaints are stored here and they'll be buried for several millennia. You've got these narrow alleyways which reach out into Ea-Nasir's dwelling. You've got alleyways in other locations over here. We've got this main road. We've got this little worship area over here. And then with all of these dwellings, what they would have had is they'd have side hustles, or the owner would live near where they work. We can consume clay here. Oh my god, this city was so hard to make. It was so hard to get right. It still isn't 100% right. You've got little wells in these courtyards. You've got hearths. And then outside of the walls of Ur, because if you remember, this is where the dig site is located within the city. Over here, you've got the ziggurat, which is located to the northwest of the city of Ur. And then down here, you've got this residential area. And look at that. We've got people walking in. They're bringing in eggs. They're using the waters of the Euphrates and Tigris to raise chickens, to raise onxes, to get wool, to get eggs, because humans like eggs. We've got house slaves. Ea-Nasir probably had a house slave. So, you know what? Let's get room for a single house slave. Right, they might as well live here. We've got production, we've got more narrow streets. Trying to get some of the rooms correct on a gridded tile was not an easy task. So I had to modify some of the buildings quite a bit. There are some areas where you would just not have rooms that open out onto the street. Instead, rooms would most likely face into courtyards, and the courtyards would branch out into different rooms. We are located on the mouth of the Euphrates River. Over here, you have the kingdom of Elam, which is located in modern-day Iran. To the north, we have the Babylonian Empire in pink, who are slowly pushing their way towards the city of Ur. Actually, Ea-Nasir lived right before the Babylonian invasion, and there was no big empire around the city of Ur. Instead, you had these smaller city-states who traded with one another. If we have a look at trade, we're importing a lot of copper, as this was the Bronze Age, and over here we have just one of many export depots that pick up copper to be sold to travelers that pass through. What's funny is that now Ea-Nasir has changed his job to becoming a tailor. Now he just makes clothes. Ea-Nasir is by the river. He's probably gonna swim across. He's going back into Ur. This was Ea-Nasir's city in Songs of Syx. I hope everyone enjoyed this video because I had a lot of fun building this up. But let me know what you think. Would you live in Ur in the Bronze Age before the Bronze Age collapse? Please let me know down in the comments. That'll be all. Bye bye.